everyone. Welcome to today's broadcast. Oh, yeah, there. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's broadcast. We are going to be talking about preparedness. And I just realized that I didn't grab my notes that I printed out for this. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining us. The reason I'm talking about this is because I think we're in an interesting period of time. And so someone in our last broadcast asked about doing something about preparedness. And I thought this was a very good idea. Now, when we're talking about preparedness, it's really important to understand what are we preparing for. And so before I get into some suggestions about being prepared, I want to talk about what I think we need to be prepared for. And there are two basic things that I want to alert people to about what is going on in this country, and especially behind the scenes in this country. Now, I've known for like over 2 decades about how absolutely corrupt the internal workings of the government are, and I haven't known all of the depth of that, but I've known that there's just been a lot of really bad things going on for a long, long time, and wondered how it would ever it was going to be fixed. In fact, I was really convinced that the only way that it was going to be fixed was for literally it to fail. But I think that now I am convinced that God has a different plan. It's going to be like cleaned up and fixed. But in the process of cleaning up and fixing it, we're going to go through some turmoil. We would go through turmoil if it wasn't cleaned up. But even in the process of cleaning up, there will be some bumps. One of the things that's very likely to happen in the very near future is there are going to be a lot of people arrested. There are currently over 6,000 sealed indictments that have been being prepared over the course of, not 6,000, 66 or 67,000 sealed indictments that have been prepared. Normally, there are 1,000 or 2,000 sealed indictments issued by the federal government every year. Sealed indictments are used to bring down criminal organizations. And what happens is you convene a grand jury and you have someone who is working on the prosecution. And so you have a bunch of people who are interconnected in corrupt dealings. And you don't want to arrest a couple of them while you're still trying to investigate and dig down and find the whole network of people. So as soon as you have the evidence prepared against a few of them, you prepare indictments and you seal them. And then you keep investigating and you keep adding more indictments as you unravel the network of conspirators and criminals. And then when you feel like you've got it all ready so that you can go out and arrest them all simultaneously, you unseal the indictments and go after them. So like I said, normally there's 1,000 to 2,000 these issued every year. This year, there have been well over 60,000 sealed indictments issued. So there's going to be a major mass arrest of people. This was actually prophesied like over 2 years ago by a man named Mark Taylor. It does appear that it's actually going to take place. The problem is when this does take place, there are a lot of people who have been programmed by mainstream media to think that this is taking place because the Trump administration is Hitler and Nazis, and they're actually trying to, set up a dictatorship and that sort of thing. And so what that's going to do is it's going to cause a lot of civil unrest. And the other thing that has the potential to cause a lot of civil unrest is the reset of the economic system. This is a problem that I've been aware of for many, many years. Once America left a standard of precious metals, gold and silver coins, as its economic basis, and started the Federal Reserve, a fiat currency that was, just paper. It's just fictitious. It's in it and run by a bank that isn't even part of the government. It's called the Federal Reserve, but it's actually a privately owned bank. Every country that has ever based its economics on a fiat currency, on paper money, including the early continental United States, which is why they put in the Constitution that gold and silver coin was the legal tender, because they'd already had experience with fiat money and the disasters it caused. So, but every country that's done this, eventually you have this inflationary curve that starts going up and up and up, and then it literally goes up until the economy, the money becomes worthless and the entire economic structure collapses. And America has been able to maintain a fiat currency system longer than any other country did, but that's because we had this dealings with the Middle East, and there was an agreement made with the countries in the Middle East that the US dollar would be the official money system to exchange for petroleum worldwide, called the petrodollar, and the world's reserve currency. In other words, the currency that everybody in the world would use as a basis for international trade. Well, that's been starting to come unraveled over the last couple of years, as China has been moving to try to become the world reserve currency, and so the chinks in that ability of America to be manipulating the money supply are coming down. And there's two possible scenarios of how that could end. One is that the current administration will literally shut down the Federal Reserve, take it over, pull in the corruption, and reestablish a precious metal standard for our currency. And if they don't do that, we'll have runaway inflation and the whole economic system will collapse and we'll have to restart again. Either way, the biggest problem that we're likely to face in the near future is civil unrest, because in the event that people are upset over mass arrests, or we have a reset of our financial system, that's going to cause a great deal of civil unrest. The reset of the financial system definitely will cause civil unrest, because likely credit cards and ATM debit cards, and also your little food stamp cards won't work. And I saw a video of a lady who her food stamp card didn't work, and she got so mad that she started trashing the entire store she was in, just going and raking things and throwing them off the shelves and throwing this tantrum, and they had to call the police. Well, you can imagine the kind of reaction of people who are if it's not just people who are on food stamps, or quote unquote, who are getting financial assistance for money, can't get that card to work and get food, but most people, because we're so used to having the debit card that we just put in the machine and we pay for our groceries and we pay for our gas and so forth. If that system suddenly stops working because the economy is being reset, then you can imagine the mass panic that that's going to cause. And that the only way that the government would be able to handle that is by declaring martial law and basically clamping down on everything. So the basic thing that we want to be prepared for is the inevitability of a major civil disruption that will hopefully, if it's being done in a managed way, which I think it is going to be done in a managed way, it won't last too long and we'll get through it rather quickly. If it happens because of mismanagement, then it's going to last longer and take longer to fix. Yeah, so you want to be prepared for at least 2 weeks of civil unrest and potentially martial law or things, and possibly as much as 3 months, three months or more. And that's what you want to prepare for. Now, this is obviously going to be worse in major metropolitan areas. So, because people who are more rural tend to be more self-reliant. There's not as likely to be rioting or demonstrations or looting in places where people are more self-reliant and prepared, in communities where people are more likely to pull together through churches or civic organizations, than in really big cities where a lot of people are isolated, and you also have a lot of people who are really, really dependent on the system and don't have any skills to be able to cope with such things. So understanding those are the possibilities. And I'm saying I'm 90% sure, actually almost 100% sure, but I never like to say, I like to give myself a little hedgeway because I can be wrong. Obviously, I'm human, but I am 90% certain that sometime in the very near future, we're going to have this civil unrest because there's going to be some resets in the government and the economy, one way or the other. Either because the government's, if we don't do something, if something isn't done deliberately to rid the criminal element and get us back to a gold standard, then what's going to happen is the government will run out of money and the ability to borrow, and the government will basically go bankrupt and everything will reset at that point. So it will be much better if it happens deliberately. If it doesn't happen deliberately, it's going to happen in a much more serious way. I think it's going to be a deliberate reset, and that will make it not last as long, so it will be easier to get through. So the first thing I want to talk about being prepared is, if you have the mindset like I do, that if we do see mass arrests, if we do see that there's things that are deliberately being done by the government to get our money system back under the control of we the people instead of by a private bank. If you see that, I want you to know that that's a good thing. Yes, it's going to cause disruption, but disruption has to happen one way or the other to get us back to where we need to be. So by just having faith that things will be okay, not panicking, having thought through things a little in advance. The biggest problem with anything like this is the panic and hysteria that set in. Now, if you're one of the people who can have a level head and aren't going to panic because you've thought things through and you've done a little bit of stuff to prepare, you're that much better off just by the fact that you have thought about this kind of thing. And you realize that the system we're living in is extremely fragile. I mean, you have to think about the fact that since almost all of us are completely dependent on the system, and we use these little debit cards and credit cards to buy almost everything, any disruption of that system is going to cause massive civil unrest for whatever reason it happens. So, but once you've got the mindset of realizing that you can't just depend on the system, that the system has the capacity for glitches and even widespread failure, then the second thing you need to do is think about your priorities of what you need to do to be prepared. And the first thing that you need to think about, that most people do not think about, and is very, very important, is if, for example, there's disruption of power, all right, electrical things, problems with oil delivery, how are you going to stay warm if this happens in the middle of winter? It's a good idea always to have extra warm clothes. If you live in any kind of climate where it gets cold, extra warm clothes, have some wool blankets. Wool blankets are very valuable to have for an emergency because wool will keep you warm even if it gets wet, which other things won't do. Like a down sleeping bag gets wet, it's worthless. But a wool blanket gets wet, it'll still keep you warm. So have some wool blankets, have some good warm clothing, have some things to keep you warm, because you can die very, very readily from exposure if you don't have stuff to keep you warm. Second big thing to think about is water. You definitely want, if there's any problems with water, you want to be prepared with some water. I think it's a good idea to have a few containers of water in your house for emergencies. If there was any kind of disruption temporarily of water distribution. And again, that's especially if you live in a major metropolitan area. But also the fact that have some way to purify water in the event that there's some breakdown of the system. So I would say that there are two good things that you should have right away. One of them is either the silver, like the silver shield that Nature Sunshine sells, or some comparable product that you can use to purify water. I think a teaspoon per quart is probably a good amount. I would probably, if the water was really yucky and you're trying to drink it, use a tablespoon per quart. I put I have 6 5-gallon containers of water at the house, all of which I put the water in and then put silver in to help keep the water good. It's probably a good idea to periodically dump them out and start over again just to keep the water fresh. But at least you have some water that you, if nothing else, you could boil or add more silver to. The other thing that you could add is iodine. If you have some Lugol solution, which is a good iodine thing, you could also add that to purify water. I don't have the directions of how much to use immediately in my head because I have the silver. You want to be able to purify water, and right along with water is sanitation. If there's some unrest, what would you do if your toilet isn't working? You've got to have some way to deal with the waste. So having thought that through, knowing you have some way to get rid of waste, something as simple as a bucket that with a little bit of dirt or sand that you can put over the waste material to make yourself a little temporary outhouse is a good thing to have, because the two biggest problems that you have, and this, by the way, is also true in case of natural disasters. The natural disasters, one of the biggest problems is sanitation, because the systems for handling human waste are disrupted, and not having clean water. So always in your thinking about things, always think about sanitation and clean water as a very, very high priority. What are you going to do with that? See, now where I live on an acre. So worst comes to worst, I can go dig a hole out in the backyard, to put waste in. But if you're living in an apartment in a major city, that's not a very feasible thing to do. So when you think about those things, okay, and I always encourage people to think about those things first, because people often, the first thing they think about is food. And, you can freeze to death or get sick from an infection from drinking contaminated water and stuff long before you would starve to death from not having enough food. While it would be very uncomfortable and you'd be, suffering a lot, you could go for 10 days to 2 weeks quite easily without food. But you can't go that long without clean water and without sanitation and without being able to stay warm and stay dry. Now, once beyond that, you need to think of food. And what I'm encouraging people to think of in terms of food is the idea of having some stuff that if you couldn't go to the grocery store, because there's a disruption in the supply of food coming into the supermarkets. It's if it's the supermarket has been looted, and while things are getting reset to like handle the delivery of food, because remember, again, the whole system that we live under relies on credit. All right, meaning, I am. okay, the farmer takes out loans to buy seed and has to pay them back to sell the crop, the blah blah blah. And each step, okay, it's dependent on the idea that I'm delivering this and I'm going to get paid. I'm going to get paid. So if there's any disruption of the money system, then there's a disruption of the supply of everything, because people have to get paid in order to buy the thing to take it to the next stage to sell it. That's why a friend of mine once said that the lifeblood of Babylon, the Babylonian economic system, is gold and silver, is money. Money is the blood of the beast, and it keeps the beast working. And if the money ever has a problem, okay, then the beast fails to live. The whole engine of the civilization in which we live is greased and fueled and moved by the flow of money. So any disruption in the flow of money is going to be a disruption in the flow of goods and services. So you want to, at minimum, have 2 weeks worth of food in case there's just a period of time. I mean, like even on the East Coast a little while back with Hurricane Sandy, there were people who got hit by that hurricane, and for 2 weeks they didn't have power. They had a hard time getting gasoline. There was all huge disruption in the flow of goods and services. So at minimum, you want to think in terms of 2 weeks. And what I would suggest for that 2 weeks is you think about food that does not require you to cook it or rehydrate it to eat. Because if there's any disruption of clean water, if there's any disruption of fuel, electricity, propane, gas, whatever, and all you have is food that requires cooking, and you have no way to cook it, and it requires rehydration, and you have a limited supply of water, that's a problem. So think in terms of stuff like, have things like canned stuff you can eat out of the can, like tuna fish, for example, or peanut butter, or have some nuts, or have some energy bars, or anything like that you can eat without having to worry too much about prepping it. All right. And so you want to have 2 weeks of that kind of food on hand somewhere that doesn't require a lot of rehydration or preparation, that you can just pretty much eat. Crackers, for example, is a good one. Crackers, peanut butter, almond butter, and if you eat these things, and I would suggest that you buy things that you actually eat. I mean, if you don't like tuna fish, don't buy tuna fish. But if you like, if you don't handle peanuts, but you do eat almond butter, then almond butter is good. And what you do is the way I do this is I have always several cans of some of these basic supplies. Okay. I do this with ketchup. I do this with mayonnaise. I do this with some soup, with peanut butter, almond butter. I have a shelf on the cupboard, and I have like a row of 3 of them. And as I buy one, as I use one, I buy one to replace it, and I move them forward and put the newest one to the back, so that they're constantly rotating. So I always have some extras of all of those basic supplies on hand, so that in the event of emergency, I've always got some jam, some peanut butter, crackers, things like that I'm constantly rotating. That way, it's stuff that you actually eat. It isn't stuff that you're going to invest money in and then just sit it over there, and if nothing ever happens, you've wasted your money. It's just a way of living that you keep some food on hand. And that way you know that if anything happens, that for a couple of weeks anyway, you can scrounge around with what you have and have food to eat. Beyond that, the best things to store are seed foods, like rice, and actually in this case, white rice is better to store than brown rice because brown rice does go bad quite easily. You have to rotate brown rice fairly quickly. But wheat and millet and amaranth and foods like this that are seeds will last for many years. And again, if you've learned how to incorporate some of these into your diet, you can cook with them and rotate them. Same thing with beans, like split peas and various kinds of legumes are also quite easy to store and can last for a long time. If you have the money, you can buy, the dehydrated food in cans. You can get all kinds of dehydrated fruits, dehydrated vegetables. The way I handle that is I have some of those kinds of foods that I've got in cans like this. I've got some powdered milk. I've got, onions, peppers, carrots, and I've got beans and stuff because I figure if you're going to be eating beans and rice and millet and stuff like that, having some dehydrated fruits and vegetables you can mix in and cook with it are really going to be helpful. That gives you a little bit longer term of storage that you can have if you want to, stock up for a longer period of time. I mean, like I said, ideally, I think you should have a minimum of 2 weeks and try to be able to have enough food that for a month or two, you could go without having to worry about food. Now, since this is a health show, I also want to make the point that having first aid supplies is really, really critical in an emergency. And there are certain things you should definitely think about. The first one, I already mentioned, relates to sanitation and the prevention of infection, because infection is going to be one of the biggest things that causes people to have problems. If you've got problems with any kind of things with the water supply or whatever, or sanitation, infection becomes a big issue. So think in terms of having some things like the silver, echinacea, golden seal, berberine, anything that you can have to fight infection. You also want to think about treating wounds. The silver or Lugol solution iodine or something to disinfect wounds in case someone gets injured. That's not so much for the scenario I'm talking about with the civil unrest, but in terms of a natural disaster. I mean, an earthquake, a hurricane, whatever, people are going to get injured. You want to be able to treat wounds and have some first aid supplies. Think about diarrhea as another big issue because, again, a lot of times if people don't have clean water, they get diarrhea. And so activated charcoal is a really good thing to have on hand. It's a good thing have on hand also because you can put it into wounds to pull out infection. You can use it on insect bites and stings. You can put charcoal poultices on things. Activated charcoal is something I would always have in a first aid kit. You can give it to somebody if they have poisoning. Also, I would think in terms of something for pain. Again, if someone's injured, you want to have some type of pain reliever. I kind of use Nature Sunshine's IF Relief as kind of my natural pain reliever. I have a couple other things I keep around to try to help manage pain, whatever you think works for you. I mean, even in this case, having some, even though I don't use them myself regularly, but ibuprofen, Tylenol, aspirin, something like that. Because sometimes for some people, the natural remedies aren't quite strong enough. Also, think in terms of stress. This is a big one. I'm someone I know who went down and had a clinic after the hurricane that hit Texas. They had set up their herbal clinic to help people, and the Red Cross was set up in the same area. And the Red Cross people came over and said, "Do you have anything for stress?" So think about the fact that people are going to be stressed. And so make sure you have something like Rescue Remedy or the Nature Sunshine Distress Remedy and some nervines, like kava, skullcap, passion flower, anything to help people kind of relax, calm down, maybe an adaptogen of some kind, but anything to help people cope with stress. Make sure you have some of that too, because stress will be another big factor you're to be dealing with in any of these scenarios. People are going to be stressed. And so you want to think about how to help them with the stress. I particularly like kava. Now, the other things you want to think about, and then I'm going to go and just talk with people a little bit more in general. I have, and I'm going to put on the link. Okay, when I put this recording on YouTube, I'm going to put a link to a couple of videos I've done in the past on emergency preparedness, where I actually went into more detail on food storage and other issues, so that you can, look at that if you want to go into this more deeply. But you definitely want to think about, okay, do you have some matches or some lighters in case you need to make a fire? Do you have something for emergency lighting? Some flashlights on hand, candles, that sort of thing for emergency lighting. And some other good things to think about is having like duct tape. Duct tape is like really good for emergency repairs and all kinds of things. A multi-tool or some kind of little toolkit to help you with things, like what a multi-tool is. It's a little like pair of pliers with a knife and scissors and all these little tools you can use to help with something. A tarp can be really helpful if you live in an area where, say, that there's a risk of say earthquakes, and your house gets damaged or destroyed and it's raining. You can pitch a tarp to help you keep dry, and if you have some wool blankets, it'll help you stay warm. And of course, another good thing is a pocket knife. Some kind of good knife for cutting things, and maybe a little bit of rope. The biggest thing that I think a lot of people do is they don't think about, the big thing is you need to think about it. Look at where you live. What is like to happen? Do you live in a hurricane zone? Do you live in an earthquake zone? Do you live in a place where you can have fires? Do you live in a place where there are possibility of tornadoes, floods, etc.? Think about where you live and what kinds of disasters might take place where you live. And then use that as a guide to think about, well, what kind of supplies would I need if I could not go to the store and get what I want? If I have to stay in my house and just take care of myself for a couple of weeks and my family, what kind of supplies do I need? Sit down and think about this, because I can't give you a set list of what you should have, because what you need in your area is going to be a little different than what I need in my area. And also, I can't do that also because I don't know what special dietary needs you have, what kinds of medications you might need for your family and so forth. These are really important things to think about. And if you've thought about them like I have in advance, okay, when I realized, I don't know, I've been following what's been going on behind the scenes for about 2.5 years, and listening to some, become aware of some Christian prophets who made some prophecies that have been spot on coming true, and looking at what they also said is still to come, and prayerfully considering it myself. And I believe we are on the verge of the biggest, most amazing reset in the history of the world. I believe what God is about to do is take off the mask and reveal the hidden works of darkness that have been going on under the scene for many, many years. And he's going to blow it wide open because he's done with the corruption. He's going to clean it up. He's going to clean house. He's bringing judgment upon the people who've been manipulating our government, manipulating our education, manipulating everything. And he is going to blow the lid off of it and create a spiritual awakening like you can't believe. The mainstream news media doesn't report it, but it's happening in Europe. There have been massive demonstrations by common French people who are said, we've had enough of the corruption. We've had enough of the things going on. We're tired of it. And so it's already happening in certain places in Europe. And it's likely to happen to a certain stage here because people are going to wake up. They're going to start recognizing the corruption that's been going on. They're going to want justice. There are going to be other people who think, well, on the other side of the fence, who think that what's happening is evil or bad. But I think what's happening is good. We need a major reset. We've been going in the wrong direction for quite some time. We've been moving away from the founding principles that made this nation what it is, and we need a reset. Our economy needs a reset. Our government needs a reset. Everything needs a reset. And if God is about to expose the corruption and what was hidden in darkness is going to be shouted from the rooftops and the veil is going to be taken off, it's a wonderful thing, but it's not going to be something that is going to go like really, really smoothly. There will be unrest. There will be disturbances, and it's best to be prepared for that and be prepared to deal with it so that you can weather it and not like be fearful and worried and so forth. Okay, that's the main stuff I want to do. I'm just going to go read some of the comments, and we're just going to talk about things. Terry says, the American Red Cross says water and wound care are very important because a small scratch could develop into a major infection. Yes, thank you. That is really important. That's why I mentioned having stuff to treat wounds and infections, because in an emergency, that is what can happen. If you don't have like hot and cold running water and soap, you can easily get a small wound causing a major infection. And things like the silver, things like charcoal, iodine, all kinds of things like that help wounds are really important, and ways of disinfecting the water. Also, she says duct tape is very important. You can even use on jersey gloves or the bottom of shoes to protect from puncture. So that's the main reason why I think duct tape is important, is because if you've got to make an emergency repair to a piece of clothing, to a hole that got in your shoe, to helping to tape up a tarp or whatever, duct tape is absolutely fantastic. If you watch, can go find the episodes of Mythbusters where they did survival stuff with duct tape. It's amazing, the stuff. They made a boat out of duct tape. They made a hammock out of duct tape. They made all these things out of duct tape. And so duct tape is like, I think, one of the major emergency preparedness things you'd like to have. Nature Sunshine has a relief formula. They have, I haven't really tried that. I've been very happy with IF Relief. That's why I don't have a set list, is because different people find different remedies valuable. I happen to have Cordydalis, which is a Chinese herb that's very helpful for pain. I actually have a toxic botanical called Gelsemium, which is actually will knock out really severe pain. I have a bunch of stuff for pain. I have some. So if you want to think about pain, just simply because of managing pain in emergency, if someone's injured, anything you can do to help relieve pain is going to be very helpful. Someone else said tuna and salmon brain food comes in pouches now. Yes, it does. And they say they keep epic jerky bars on hand in ER packs, high in protein and low in sodium, and can eat on the run if fleeing, and nut bars too, because dark chocolate has magnesium. So I go to Costco and they sell bulk things of like nut bars or energy bars. And so I buy these. We use them when we go hiking. All right. So I can rotate them, or sometimes I eat them for a snack at work. But if I keep several boxes of those things on hand, then I always have something quick to eat or whatever on the run. And that's the whole idea, is what I'm saying about that 2-week supply of food. It should be stuff that is high protein, high caloric, and nutritional intake that you can eat without having to worry about stopping and cooking and preparing it. Something that's very easy and quick to eat. Like another thing is trail mix. Like, a mix of nuts and dried fruits and all that sort of thing. Terry also says that they have a Travel Berkeley, which is a water filter. I've heard of it. I don't own one. But it is something that you actually can get, that you can pour dirty water in the top and clean water will come out. And they basically, so water purification is very handy. Depends a lot on where you live. Now, with me, where I live, the biggest issue in water is just supply. I mean, because I live in a desert, and while the place where I live has an independent water supply that has 2 very, very large tanks, it's independent of everything else. So in the short term, since it's gravity fed, I wouldn't have to worry too much about water. In the long term, I'd have to go someplace to haul water, which would have to go quite a long way to haul it, and have to be able to disinfect it because there's no immediate source of water anywhere handy. So when it comes to water, you have to think about, again, where you live and how you're going to handle that. Let's see. Okay, the amount of iodine. It's going to depend on the strength of the iodine, which is why I don't, let me go see if I can just quickly pull something up. Because this kind of stuff is so easy to find on the internet, that like you type in iodine for water purification. All right, that's what I just did. I typed in iodine for water purification, and it's going to come up, and it's going to say how to purify water using iodine tincture, and there are several different things you can have. And okay, you want iodine tincture, 2% iodine. You fill the bottle, and what he recommends is 5 to 10 drops per 32 fluid ounces. So, I mean, like I said, it's very easy to find this kind of information now with the internet. So just, when you figure out exactly what you need, just look up and make sure you know how to use it. Can I spell the items for pain? Okay. You're not going to be able to find gelsemium because it's a toxic botanical, so it's not available readily anywhere. I really like Corydalis, which is available. It's Coryddalis, Corydalis. It's a Chinese herb that's a mild opiate. It can help you sleep, and it can help to relieve pain. I've used it to help wean people off of opioids. It's milder, but it helps. Since pain is associated with inflammation, I really like the Nature Sunshine's IF Relief because it's got turmeric, which, by the way, turmeric or curcumin can be another good thing to have for pain. You can also use lobelia to help with pain, kava to help with pain. You just have to kind of, again, think about what it is. Okay, so like someone said essential oils. Like I really like having an analgesic essential oil blend. I really like the Nature Sunshine's Taifu. Someone else mentioned there's a Recover blend. There's several different blends. You want to look for something that has wintergreen, camphor, menthol. What else? clove. Those are all good oils for topical numbing of things. Someone was talking about canning beef with a pressure cooker. I've done that once. I'm not too experienced with doing pressure cooking, even though I have it. Can I provide an herbal list for emergency kits? I can. I'll put one up and post it. But again, I want you to think, number one, infection, both internally and topically. Number one, what do you have that you could use for infection, right? So echinacea, the silver shield, or some other comparable silver product that's not like old-fashioned colloidal silver, one of the newer silver products. Your berberine containing herbs, berberine or any of the berberine containing herbs, golden seal, Oregon grape, coptis, that sort of thing. So you have something that helps with infection, and then you have something to help with pain, okay, for an emergency. We just talked about that. You also want something to deal with diarrhea, which I recommend activated charcoal for that. And you want stuff for stress, because stress is going to be a big issue with that. So there's the Bach Rescue Remedy or the Nature Sunshine Distress Remedy, both of which are really good for helping people who are in shock. You can also have any of your nervines or a nervine formula. I have kava, I have lobelia. You can also use skullcap, passion flower. You want some of your stronger nervines. You can also use something, some adaptogens, Eleuthero, Schizandra, or any formula of adaptogens, so that you're doing something that helps the person cope with stress. Because when people are stressed, they get hysterical, they panic, whatever, and having something like rescue remedy or distress remedy or a little lobelia or kava or whatever to take them out of the panic, okay? Get them to settle down, because when you're panicked, this is the number one thing that kills people in an emergency is hysteria and panic. Because what happens is when you go into that panic mode, your higher brain functions are hijacked by your limbic system, and you react in kind of this scared, instinctive mode, and you can't think through what is going on. If you can calm yourself down and think about your situation, you can usually figure out what you need to do to survive. But if you're in hysterics, you're going to run around like a chicken with your head cut off, and you're going to do something stupid, and it isn't going to work. That's why the first thing I talked about is, if you sit down and don't just take a list from me, but think about, where do I live? Okay, where do I live? What kinds of natural disasters could occur in the place where I live, and what would I do to be prepared for them? And what would I do if I had to flee and evacuate to get away from a fire or an earthquake or whatever? Then the next thing is, what would I do if there's a shutdown of with government, the economy, anything else like that, that's going to temporarily disrupt the flow of goods and services? So I can't go to the store, I can't buy groceries, I can't. What am I going to do? Sit down, think. Because in the act of thinking about it, understand? Not just taking a little checklist from me, but thinking, using your noggin, thinking about it, you will preset your mind so that when something happens, you aren't going to be quick to panic. You're going to go back and think, okay, what did I do? What did I do to prepare? Okay, I anticipated something like this might happen. What have I got? What have I got to work with? How can I prove? This is the most important thing that you need to do. someone mentioned what I found. I've used IF relief after surgery for pain relief, and I found that it worked better than prescription medications and had no side effects. I had my gallbladder taken out. They gave me those stupid pain medicines. They made me nauseous, sick to my stomach. So one day after getting home, I said, heck with this. And I just started taking a couple of IF relief every 2 or 3 hours until the pain subsided. And it actually worked better, and it did healing. So I think it's much, much better than that. Now, let's see. Someone mentioned about canned pineapple. That sounds like a good thing. Okay, what about those who don't store for themselves, think it's okay from others? Well, you do have a right to keep and bear arms. Someone said there's an article. Where is that? Where when disaster strikes, steps that can save lives. Is that just Google that? Are you saying? Someone said, when I was a child, my mother thought about what she would remove from our house in an emergency. Unfortunately, our house did burn, and mother automatically headed for the items she had planned on. Okay, so basically, I'm just saying it's a mindset. And it's a mindset I've had for a long period of time. Now, I want to quickly mention this is the last of the higher perspective shows that I'm doing. I've scheduled the series for next year. I'm moving it from Mondays to Wednesdays because that gives me a little more flexibility when I have to travel on weekends. And I'm moving it from 10 o'clock to 10:30. It is recorded, so you don't have to attend the live event to participate. I put up the link if any of you want to go ahead and actually click on the link and register for next year. If any of you when you signed up for this series, hit the subscribe to future webinars automatically, I went ahead and automatically subscribed you to this program. So I'm going to continue, but I'm renaming it from the higher perspective to the healthy perspective, because in this particular show, I'm going to focus primarily on health. Although, I did go into the emergency preparedness, but a lot of this was related to health. So I'm going to stick with the theme of health and answering people's questions and just talking about whatever is coming up relative to health or information that I'm investigating or researching. So you can then register and get the next show. Now, these will be held approximately twice a month. And I also want to, I'll put the link on YouTube. If any of you who are watching this after the fact, if you go to YouTube, I will put the link to subscribe to next year's show in the comments underneath the video, so you can subscribe to that. And in addition, I'm going to also, and I'm just let me pull up my thing. I'm going to also pull up for a second. I am doing a second show. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to alternate on Wednesdays, leaving periodically a week when I'm maybe gone or taking a vacation, but basically every other week with just a few exceptions. I'm going to be doing a program, and I'm going to alternate between a program I'm going to call Seeking Light and Truth and the Healthy Perspective. The Seeking Light and Truth is something that's going to talk about stuff other than health. And I have a lot of things I want to talk about. If any of you want to see the preview and get the idea of what I'm going to talk about, I have just put up the link for that. And I will also put up the link for the preview with the recording, as well as the link for that entire series as well. And so if any of you want to hear what I have to say about other topics, okay, about education and government and economy, economics and spiritual things and so forth, you can subscribe to the other show. And both of these will be free, and I've already scheduled all of these to run through the coming year. Let's see here. Someone mentioned a plant they're looking for, and I've not heard of that plant, so I really don't know about it. Yeah, someone says, all the good info I have stored in my computer are useless without power. I would suggest also that you might have go find a good book on dealing with emergencies and have it around, like a good first aid manual and a good kind of emergency preparedness book, so that and have read it beforehand. So if you don't quite remember something, you can at least go grab your first aid book and look it up. Someone mentioned using the spray bottle for distress remedy with a few drops of refuge, spraying it down to calm people down. Yep, that's a good thing to do. I just have a belief in self-reliance. I don't trust putting my future in the hands of the society, other human beings. I believe in relying on myself and God. Okay, I don't want to say that I'm totally self-reliant, because I pray a lot. I have a firm faith in God, in Christ, and the ability I have to pray and get help and answers. And that's one of the reasons why I don't have a lot of fear over stuff like this, is because I believe that with God's help, I can get through anything. And even if it's something where it's my time to go, it's my time to go. And I think that having that inner peace is the most important thing of being prepared. Because if you don't have that inner peace, if you don't have that ability to rely on yourself and rely on your ability to pray and get guidance and know that you can get help when you need it, then, like I say, the biggest thing that's going to take you down in the event of anything going wrong is panic and fear and hysteria. And if you can learn how to navigate life without that panic and fear and hysteria, you're going to be 100% better off than other people who don't have that. So I would encourage you to be sure to think about that before you think about everything else. And it's also why I say the best thing to do is not just rely on a checklist from me or anybody else in a book. It's very easy to find a checklist of supplies to have. But it's more important to think about it, because the very act of thinking about it prepares you mentally and spiritually to deal with it, which is, there's no way you can physically prepare for everything. It's impossible. You'd have to have a bunker full of all kinds of supplies and everything. And then what are you going to do if somebody tries to steal it from you? The biggest thing that you need to be prepared is a mindset of preparedness, a mindset of self-reliance, and a faith that God can help you in times of difficulty. Someone mentioned about a generator. A generator is nice, especially for a short-term emergency, because if you have a generator, you can basically keep your fridge going or your freezer going for the food you have stored in there. But you have to have fuel available for that. There are generators that hook up to propane. Like I don't have a generator. I wish I had a generator or some solar panels, but I haven't been able to afford that. But I do have a emergency kit in my cars. I keep first aid kits and emergency first aid supplies in my car, in my office. Like I said, I have a mindset of preparedness. I like to think ahead, and I don't think this is negative thinking. I think it's positive thinking. It's thinking that says the reality of this life is bad things happen sometimes. And I'm going to be better off if I thought about it in advance and have basically made some preparations. Yeah, I've read 1 Second After. I don't think we're gonna. I used to think that like what that book talks about 1 Second After was where we were headed. I don't believe that anymore, but I do believe that we are going to go through some short-term periods of turmoil as things reset, and I think that they're actually going to go for the better. And I don't have time today to go into why I believe that they're going to get better after this reset. But I do want to tell you that I think that some of the stuff that is coming is not doomsday. It is actually something that God is doing to help move things forward in a way that He wants things to go. And that if we have faith that He can get us through this in a really good way. Thanks everybody for watching today. Again, like I said, this is the last of this broadcast. If you want to continue to be part of these programs, again, before I leave, I just put up again the link that you can click on to go register for next year's show. And also those links will again be underneath here in the recording. And please, if you have a chance, subscribe to my YouTube channel, and please like these videos on YouTube. When you like the video on YouTube, it helps bring the videos up in the search engine so I can get this information out to more people. So I appreciate any of your help, because I really do want to get the information I have out to more people. So any way that you can help me sharing these videos on your social media platform, or even just liking them on YouTube, or I'm going to also start putting up videos on Vimeo, will help me get that message out to more people. So thanks again, and have a wonderful day, and have a wonderful Christmas holiday. All right. And best wishes for also a happy new year. Bye.